Hi, I'm Mike, owner of the In-Groove in Phoenix, Arizona. Today I'm going to do a new system tour for 2021. A lot of changes came this past year in 2020 after I filmed my last system tour. None of it was by design. A few things were, but for the most part, everything that I've changed in my system this year has been kind of because of circumstance. So earlier in the year, I bought a classical record collection. If you go back and check out in the description, you can check that video out. But when I bought that collection, it was at an auction house, and I talk about it a little bit again in that video. But I bought it at an auction house, but in the photographs for the auction house, there were a lot of, you could see the records, but in the distance you could see the gear that was actually something that this particular gentleman used. So you saw the records, you saw the gear, and you kind of could barely make out what it was. Turns out, though, when I got to the auction, none of the gear was for sale. It was only the records. Still, I spent 25 grand. I bought a ton of records. But the gear was something that never came about. About a month after I bought the record collection, I got a phone call from somebody and said, hey, that record collection you bought, the gear is now all for sale, and here it is. So I made a deal with the guy, and some of that gear ended up coming home with me, causing other changes to need to take place. But I don't want to get too far ahead. I will kind of run you through that as I do an updated system tour. So some of the stuff that has stayed and some of the stuff that has gone. But we will start with the core of the system, which is the Macintosh C1000 controller and C1000T Preamplifier. This is actually originally designed as a 3-chassis system. So you had the controller, you had the tube side, and you would have had a solid state side as the third chassis. I would say most people that actually bought these, though, got it as a 2-box system, the controller and the tube. Many people, I think, kind of preferred the sound of this and realized that they would never utilize the third box. I was kind of that same way, but talking to other dealers, that seemed to be the most popular configuration, the way that this was sold. So C1000, one of the oldest pieces in my system, that is actually going to probably be replaced with something that's a little bit more suited for my new amplifiers. But as of now, C1000. Showed you in the last video the Macintosh Mp1100. The reason I have the Mp1100 is really not so much out of brand loyalty. It was because I liked the functionality that it had. That particular phono stage has the ability to do 3 turntables or tone arms in any configuration. You're not relegated to one moving magnet and one moving coil. That's pretty common with a lot of phono stages. This gives you the ability to do 3 tone arms, turntables, fully customizable. You can control gain, all the functionality in every single channel. Also, it has a couple of other cool features. It has a line input XLR, and it has a real high quality digital analog to digital converter. So I'm not a big fan of digitizing records, but there's some stuff I just like to digitize. My Santana Abraxas One Step, I don't want to be toting that back and forth to the store. Back and forth to the store. That thing has become super expensive. The boxes don't wear well on them. And I digitized it and I play the file in the store. Still blows people away how good that record sounds, even digitized. Not as good as the actual vinyl, but it's quite impressive. But I've used it to also, because it has the XLR inputs, I've also digitized some of my reel-to-reel master tapes. Bring those to the store. So it's quite handy. It serves the purpose exactly, what I wanted. But yeah, that is probably going to stay in the system. I don't have that on my radar to change. Going into that is actually 2 turntables. My main turntable, my AMG V12. The V12 is actually got the upgraded AMG cable going into an Ortofon the ST80 SE step-up transformer. That's a 28 decibel gain step-up transformer. Then going back into the Mp1100. So I'm coming from a Benz LPS with this particular cartridge. I talked about that a little bit in the last video. I prefer the sound of the Windfeld, but it took a little bit to get the sound I wanted. I preferred this cartridge overloaded. So the cartridge requires about 64 to 65 decibels of gain. The right sweet spot for me with this cartridge was dropping the phono stage down to 40 decibels of gain, putting in the step-up transformer, giving me 68 decibels of gain. It runs a little hot. It sounds better to me. So that's kind of the way I've designed this system. So my second table has changed quite a bit. And I bought a record collection early last year. And the particular gentleman is a YouTube follower. He found me on YouTube. And I went to his house. He was selling off his turntable, all of his records, his one CD, and his Macintosh CD player. He was getting completely out of physical media. He had a real nice system. He was keeping all of that. He just was going to digital files. So anything that he already had digitized everything. I bought cartridges from him. Ultrasonic cleaner was everything that was physical though had to go, and everything that played physical media had to go. So this was his higher end turntable, Ortofon Ovation with the universal tone arm, with a clear audio moving magnet cartridge, and the the MCD 550. You can tell how much I use it. I don't even know what it is. MCD 550. SACD CD player. Again, he had one CD. He owned the CD player. He had one CD. I guess maybe like myself, he realized CDs are lame, and he bought one and then gave it hung it up. But it had sat so long that when I got it, it actually had a bad transport. I had to have a new transport put in it, which is apparently a notorious problem with that particular unit, which was unfortunate, but got it home. Played a CD, made sure it worked, and I really haven't played it since. So there it kind of sits. So the turntable was going to be my dedicated mono table, but it's sat here. I've listened to it once. It's sat here for about a year untouched because one of the things, and I've been a little bit busy at work, but I've kind of decided I want to do a pretty significant turntable upgrade, but I would like something with two tone arms. I just haven't made up my mind exactly what direction I want to go with the turntable. So that's kind of what's going to happen. I'm going to end up replacing these two turntables. I'm going to get something that is higher end and something that has two tone arms on the same turntable. That's kind of, rather than having a two turntable solution, I want to put it all into one. So a lot of what you see here, ironically enough, will probably not change. The SACD will change, excuse me. The SACD player will stay because I'm never going to spend a bunch of money on a CD player because I don't listen to CDs. The reason I ended up keeping it, though, was shortly before the pandemic, I bought an estate from a guy in another collection, and the guy was a big audiophile, but a digital audiophile. He had about 600 CDs, all mobile fidelity, DCC, audio fidelity, master sound. He had all the audiophile CDs, and I ended up taking them home because I just didn't have time to sell them. I don't have an audience for it in the store. It's something like that I would normally put online. I don't like to put a lot of things online, but something like that would probably have gone online. I never had the time to do it. I just brought it home. Then a couple of weeks later, the CD player, turns up. So I said, you know what? I'll take it all home. And I've listened to a few of the CDs, but very, very few. It kind of just sits on a shelf. The CDs sit on a shelf, and the CD player sits on a shelf. So I'll end up keeping that. I'll more than likely end up keeping the Mp1100. I've got an idea of some stuff I'm going to demo. A buddy of mine copied my system a little bit, and he got the phono stage that I'm thinking I might get. I'll probably borrow his and give it a listen to, see if I ended up liking it. But yeah, most of everything you'll see here will end up changing. I'll keep the cartridge. I'll keep the step-up transformer. I'll keep the Solidsteel sands. I really, really dig the Solidsteel sands. Extremely solid. I mean, 150 pounds a piece. They are extremely hard to move. They don't make noise. They don't vibrate. They allow me to come over here while I'm playing things at really high levels, volume-wise, and I can make tweaks and not have to ever worry about bumping into the table or causing damage to my speakers or any of my equipment because I accidentally jostled something too hard at, high levels of volume. They have subsequently lowered the noise floor considerably too. The Solidsteel shelf in conjunction with my HRS rack, keeps the noise floor really, really low. Oddly enough, I bought the turntable. I had no intention of buying the HRS rack. The turntable, when I got it, I put it on my audio rack that I had at the time. You'll see it in some of my older videos. And it was extremely noisy. I mean, you could hear, it was kind of almost created a feedback loop. Now, when I bought the turntable, it was demoed on the HRS rack, but when I brought it home, it sounded awful. I had to go back immediately, get the HRS rack. I borrowed his floor model, ordered one, brought it home, sounded perfect. But yeah, that was kind of a requirement at the time, the HRS rack with the AMG turntable. But the AMG turntable with the rack, with the Solidsteel rack, still sounds great. And if I had to keep this and I didn't change out the turntable, I wouldn't mind at all. Out of everything I have over here, the cartridge and the AMG turntable are my two favorite pieces, and the two that I will probably be last to change, I guess you would say. But yeah, there'll be a lot of changes coming over here to match the rest of my system. So I showed you earlier in the, in the last video, I think I posted that about a year ago today, or, around a year ago. I had an Akai reel-to-reel. I'm a huge reel-to-reel fan. I have a lot of the master tape 15 IPS stuff that I play on my main reel-to-reel player, which I'll show you a little bit later. But a customer brought the Technics 1700 into the store. It was super cherry. He had all the attachments, the remote, battery pack. He had, it was mint in the box. I bought it. The thing didn't work even in the slightest. It needed a full rebuild, recap. Apparently they're notorious for melting inside the chassis. But yeah, that was kind of the case. One large build later, it works fantastic. It's considered, again, probably the best 4-track reel-to-reel ever made. So that upgraded the Akai. I've got a really solid, again, 4-track. I've got another really solid 4-track, and then I've got a dedicated 2-track. I'll show you that. I actually got 3 reel-to-reel machines now. So that replaced the Akai. Even though I have a better studio machine that plays 1/4-track, I actually prefer this because it's a little bit more user-friendly. It auto-reverses. It does stuff of that nature. So I will be keeping that. So yeah, let's see, make sure I covered everything. Rack, phono stage, turntable, other turntable, step-up transformer. We've got the, that'll do it here. Of course, I've got all my little accessories, stylus cleaner, various brushes to keep the record clean. I talked to you guys about this many times. I ultrasonically clean all my records, so record hygiene, very important, and I keep up on it. But yeah. All right, so let's take a look at the speakers and the amplifiers, which are all new in 2021. Okay, new speakers and amps for 2021. So I will start with the Wilson Alexandria Series 2 X2 speakers. Again, like I was talking about earlier, when I bought the classical record collection, this was actually the gentleman's pair of speakers. And I ended up purchasing these with the intention that I bought them at a decent enough price that I could turn around and resell them. I deal with a lot of hi-fi gear at the store. Nothing quite to this level, but I knew I could turn around and resell them and make some money. But I brought them home, of course, because, you want to hear what a pair of Wilson Alexandrias at 700 pounds a piece and roughly my size, 6 foot tall, sound like. So I brought them home and gave them a listen. I was absolutely floored how good these speakers sounded. The problem was, as good as they sounded on some things, they sounded awful on others. But my wife absolutely hated them, but I could tell that these things had massive potential. So I, 7 hours to set up. It was disassembling them. I had to clean them all. I had to reassemble them. They have a pretty detailed setup instructions inside of their manual. Setting them up wasn't hard. It was actually relatively easy, but it was time consuming. And the fact that they weigh 700 pounds, they had to be mostly deconstructed. So it was time consuming, but I had a buddy that helped me out with it. We set them up, but they just didn't pair well with my amps. And at the time I had the Macintosh XRT, the Macintosh 1.2 kWs. So I just didn't feel that they sounded right. They were very, very harsh, overly bright. You know, a lot of people online said, well, it's a titanium tweeter they use, but I just, you know, I've heard these speakers at shows, I've heard them at our local Wilson dealer here, and they just never sounded like that. You know, they never were that shrill and that bright. I have a great tuned room. I didn't feel it was the room, I felt it was the amps. So the gentleman that I purchased them from had a pair of VTL Siegfried 2 amplifiers. Dave Wilson actually designed these particular speakers with a pair of VTL Siegfried amplifiers. So logic would tell you like, maybe I should try them with a pair of VTL Siegfried amplifiers. It just so happened one of my customers was selling a pair of VTL Siegfried 1s. He said, you know what, why don't you give them a try? See what you think. You know, if you want to buy them, fine. If not, no problem. So I went to his house. We loaded them up at around 280 to 300 pounds a piece in the crates. And I brought them home. Not this pair. Again, this was a pair of Siegfried 1s. These are a pair of Siegfried 2s, but I'll get to that. Brought them home. Again, Angel hated the whole thing. She hated moving the speakers because she helped me out a lot. God bless her heart. She's often complained about that on our live streams, but she helped me out. She helped me get the amps in here. She helped me get the speakers in here. We sat her down in the chair. We plugged it all in. I played it, and she was just devastated. Why was she devastated? Because she knew how good they sounded, and she knew I would keep them. So I spent more time with it. There was some I wasn't fully sold on the sound of the VTL 1s. There was kind of a ringing that I heard that was kind of associated with this amplifier. And that was something that was corrected into the VTL 2. So what happened was I decided I was going to keep, I wanted a pair of VTLs. The VTLs made this speaker spectacular. This speaker was spectacular, but it never sounded spectacular. But the VTL Siegfried 1s, I knew what I had to do, and that was get a pair of VTL Siegfried 2s, because that would essentially solve all my problems. Found a pair in California, drove out to California, bought the pair. Angel helped me. God bless her. She wasn't happy about the drive there and back, but we did it. I called up my buddy. I said, you know what, I'm not going to buy the VTL Siegfried 1s, but I had another friend who was interested in them, so I ended up setting up a deal to where he had bought them. But the speakers and the VTL Siegfried 2s were a magical combination. I will say this. I still love the line arrays. I still have them. I let Angel, you know, they're in another room in the house. The amps, the line arrays. Angel uses them. She loves them. I still enjoy them. The Wilsons are extremely, extremely, extremely analytical. I cannot overemphasize that enough. If you have a good, well-recorded record, it sounds absolutely amazing. If you have something that is mediocre to substandard, it does not gloss over that, and the record sounds atrocious. The Macintosh setup glossed over a lot of that. It made bad-sounding records sound okay. Great-sounded records sounded great. With the Wilsons and the VTLs, great-sounding records sound mind-boggling stupendous. So I've got to the point where I've upgraded so much stuff in my system. I've got all the right records that I'm willing to have mind-boggling, stupendous-sounding records and sacrifice the lower-quality sounding stuff. You know, but a lot of the stuff that I once enjoyed, I don't listen to anymore because this brings out all the flaws and makes it sound horrible. So, yeah, it's kind of, I've had to retool how I listen to music because of the speakers and the amp combination. So, yeah, there we are with that. So I will say this, though. I did one shootout. I did the Mingasum Hum on this particular setup. And I got to tell you, it is the easiest thing in the world to do now, these record shootout reviews. I know I haven't done a lot lately, but they're so easy to do on this system. It's fantastic. I can tell you, I agonized over Dark Side of the Moon. I spent days and days and days over the course of months doing that because it was so hard telling the differences from one record to another. going back and doing it again. With the Wilsons and the VTLs, easy pie. Easy, easy, easy. I could have got that review done in 4 hours. You know, filmed it the whole 9 yards, had it on YouTube. I'm going to start doing a lot more record reviews now. I just been busy retooling the store to accommodate the online business. But yeah, I'm going to thoroughly enjoy getting them done nice and quickly with the Wilsons and the VTLs. The VTLs, it's kind of nice. He threw in a pair of carbon fiber Grand Prix stands. And yeah, as far as cabling for these go, I have Wireworld Eclipse Silver and the second top tier power cables. These are IEC 20 plugs, so they required a special, special connector power cord. And these are the Electra Platinums, I believe. But yeah, so Wireworld cabling throughout. The whole system, by the way, too, is Wireworld Silver Eclipse. So throughout the system, cables, and the power cord. So yeah, let's take a little bit closer of a look at these VTLs. These things are absolute monsters. Okay, so as you see in there, we've got we've got 12 KT88 gold lines. You could do either 6550s with this particular amp, or you could do the KT88s. I prefer the KT88s. They sound much better lower end with the KT88s. There's a dampening switch. That's a that's an upgrade from the Siegfried 1s to the 2. You can control the dampening. This is an amazing tube amp. I've owned tube amps in the past, but I have never owned anything that is this. I mean, this is a computer marvel. Every time you turn the music off or you're changing records, it rebiases itself. So each tube has a matching LED light that goes with it, and you will see the lights flicker while you turn off the amp, and it rebiases itself. So it's constantly at maximum, maximum peak sound, maximum performance. It is a 4-minute startup though. It really warms up the tube slowly. It goes through its biasing procedure. You will see when you turn it on, it biases all the tubes, warms it up really, really slow, and the 4 lights go off. When those 4 lights go off, the tube is on. I gotta tell you, it's nice in the wintertime. It keeps the room nice and toasty. I don't even have to have the heat on. The 24 KT88s make a very, very nice space heater, although quite expensive. I would not recommend it for that reason only. But yeah, I've got the 12 AT7s are some vintage Muller tubes. The 12 BX7s are some old vintage English Mullards as well. So unbelievably killer amp. Also, when a tube goes out, it tells you, replace the tube, it gives you the number, and when you pop off the lid, the light is flashing on the tube that you need to replace. Replace the tube, clear the fault, put the lid back on, it's done. If you blow a plate fuse or you blow a fuse on it, it'll tell you to replace the fuse. There's a built-in built-in fuse tester in the back. You test what fuse is bad. You got a little kit. You replace the bad fuse, boom, you're off to the races again. I have had on the VTL Siegfried 1s that I was borrowing from a buddy, I had a plate fuse go, and I had some tubes go. But this was a new set of tubes on the Siegfried 2 that I purchased, and I have not had a tube go bad on this amp yet, or a fuse. So this thing is just an absolute marvel of tube technology. Probably the absolute best tube amp on the market. I do not think you can buy a better sounding or better quality tube amp. It's unbelievable, and I love it, and it really makes the Wilsons sound as good as they are. So my theory is I'm going to get the matching preamp and phono stage, possibly the phono stage, to go with this. My buddy, who I ended up getting the Siegfried 1s to, he bought the matching preamp and phono stage, like I had said earlier, and I've listened to it, and it is absolutely spectacular. I have just not found the right pair to go, you know, the right one to go with this system. I've got silver now, so I want everything to remain silver. And so far, what has come up for sale has been black. So, yeah. I will get up, you know, matching phone, you know, matching preamp eventually. But yeah, there they are, the VTL Siegfried 2s, balanced drive. Unbelievably awesome amps. So let's move along. Okay, this is my lesser of the two studio reel-to-reel machines. This is an Atari Mtr10. I actually got this from the same gentleman who owned the Wilson Alexandria speakers and all the classical records. I originally went there with the intention of only buying this reel-to-reel. I ended up making the deal on the speakers. But yeah, here it is. This is actually a great undervalued machine. I guess a lot of people aren't nuts about the Atari sound, but this is an extremely well-built machine, and I actually like having two of these machines so I can make copies of tape. But yeah, the Atari MTR-10, he actually had a quarter track head put on it. So this is a 2-track studio machine, or you flip the switch, you now can use the quarter track head. He had one of the most amazing 2-track reel-to-reel collections. So the original reel-to-reels from the early 50s, before they started making high-speed tapes, 4-track tapes, they were original 2-track tapes made similar to how master reel-to-reel tapes are made. He had almost a complete run of everything that had ever come out on tape. So he was using the Atari MTR-10 for that. He had the ability to play not only all of the master tape stuff, those early reel-to-reels, but then he had the ability to flip the switch and play the 4-track stuff. So for him, this was his machine that did everything. So yeah, it's a great machine. I love having two reel-to-reels now. It gives me the ability to really play to my heart's content, make copies of stuff. Yeah, it's fantastic. And it's actually a really nice machine. I bought, and I discussed this in another video, I bought Ed Michel, the legendary producer from Impulse. I bought his reel-to-reel archive. But it's stuff that had sat for 30, 40 years. So a lot of those reel-to-reels had to be respliced. They needed to be gone through. I actually preferred, out of all my machines, doing all the resplicing and doing everything on this particular machine. It has an excellent jog function that allows me to essentially get up really, really close to the seam, the tape splice, back off of it, resplice the tape. Works fantastic. I think it's a good sounding machine as well. So I don't know why these things are not significantly more valuable. Maybe somebody can explain that to me in the comments. But my next machine I'll show you, the ATR-102, real nice, clean, restored machine, $15,000, $20,000 now. Really nice, clean Atari MTR-10, maybe a couple $1,000. Not a lot of money in the grand scheme of things for what this machine does and is capable of. Another thing that is really nice about this machine, you can actually, via a switch, select IEC or NAB equalization, where the ATR, you cannot do that. You got to put an alignment tape in and recalibrate the machine. This gives me the ability to switch back and forth on the fly. Really, really good functional machine. Does everything you need it to do. Really, really nice. But let's take a look at the ATR. All right, and like I talked to you guys about on my channel many, many times, I am a huge reel-to-reel fan. I love the master tape stuff, the ultra tape, the tape project stuff, the other companies that are making reel-to-reel tapes. And this is my go-to machine to play those tapes on. This is an ATR-102. This is fully restored right before Mike Spitz passed away from ATR Magnetics. When I bought this machine originally, it had a 1-inch tape block on it. I took that off, shelved it, bought a 1/4-inch block, bought the correct glides, changed the hubs. I love it. Reel-to-reel for me is the ultimate sound. And I think anybody that's ever heard reel-to-reel, it is the ultimate sound. It is the best that is achievable. Reel-to-reel is what almost every, it is the master tape from pretty much anything from the late 40s till the early 80s. Everything that you love musically is found on a 1/4 inch 15 IPS for the most part reel-to-reel tape. So it is the closest you can get to the master would be a copy of the master, and that is what is achievable here. It's a little obnoxious as far as, it's not as easy as playing a record, and it doesn't, reel-to-reel. These things start at about $450 a album. So, and you're limited as far as what you can buy. Not everything is available on reel-to-reel like on record. There is 100 tapes maybe available, 200 tapes at the absolute most that you can buy on reel-to-reel at the moment. So you're very, very limited. But I can tell you this, if you get a tape project copy of, say, Lee Morgan's A Sidewinder, you put that on and you put any other version that's ever come before it, whether it's vinyl, Music Matters vinyl, original vinyl, CDs, HD tracks, anything you can possibly imagine, the tape will absolutely smoke it. Doesn't get better than the reel-to-reel tape. It is the end-all, be-all. I will also end on a final note. My room has been acoustically tuned with Vicoustic Panels. It kind of eliminates the slap echo that this room had before and kind of softens the upper end frequency range a little bit. But yeah, that is it, guys. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Check us out on the web, www.theingroove.com. Until next time,